Welcome to WeLearn Virtual Learning Network. This is session number 8 of Personnel Administration and the topic is Classification of Services. Topics to be covered are classification of services, basis of classification, advantages, types, then classification of services in India during pre-independence period, classification of civil services since independence, critical appraisal of the existing classification system, recommendations of the administrative reforms, commissions, and last one is recommendations of the 3rd and 4th Central Pay Commission on classification of services. Now, classification of services. Classification is a process of division of things or persons on the basis of common characteristics. In personnel administration, classifications means grouping of various positions on the basis of their duties and responsibilities. Positions having similar duties and responsibilities are put together in one class. A class has been defined by Stahl as a group of positions sufficiently alike in their duties and responsibilities to justify common treatment in various employment processes. The importance of classification of service cannot be overemphasized. Classification brings some order line into a system and makes the uniform treatment of all the people who are grouped together on certain criteria. It also makes possible justification of differential privileges given to certain distinct categories. The duties, responsibilities, qualifications, requirements, eligibility conditions, salary, status, even authority to be vested all depend to the great extent on the proper system of classification. Hence, it has considerable functional value and validity. According to Feiner, upon proper classification depends the efficiency of recruitment, possibility of creating a rational promotional system, and the equitable treatment of people working in different departments. Classification of services is important because it determines the optional jurisdiction of the services and the nature of the responsibilities to be discharged, as also the jobs to be performed by the incumbents of different groups within the services. It facilitates identification of various hierarchic layers and functional segments of the services at any given time. Classification is an organizational tool of great importance which, if administered properly, can bring satisfaction to the functionaries. Basis of classification. Classification is a process of grouping objects alike in one or more characteristics in classes, taking into account several criteria for such classifications. Functions are determined on the basis of job, task, duties, and responsibilities. When jobs similar in nature are indexed, they form a group, and there can be higher or lower groups of broadly similar work units. Advantages of classification. Facilitates proper division of work. Classification system as a tool of management offers considerable assistance in developing an administrative hierarchy and in making proper division of work. This makes it easier for the management to organize its work and divide it properly among the various levels. Also, the classification system sets out the necessary hierarchy and establishes the level in it. Second, removes arbitrary standards. The classification system, by institutionalizing pay structure in other terms of services based on certain objective criteria, can remove arbitrary standards. This makes it possible for the management to remove personalized considerations in matter relating to civil services and to ensure fair treatment to employees. Such a system generates a substantial feelings of security and justice in the mind of an average employee. Next is promotes employee motivation. The classification system can be employed by the management for directing its operations and for sustaining employee motivation and provide necessary incentives. A systematically development classification schemes like make it possible for the management to identify area of work, differentiate between employees according to the job they do, and also to promote employees who show potentialities for doing higher kind of duties, thereby giving recognition to the deserving and meritorious personals. Ensure effective manpower planning and utilization. An immediate assessment of the type and quantum of skills available within an organization is easily made, thereby locating the persons qualified in each category. It makes it easier to control the intake of skills in proportion to the requirements and also to build up a personnel inventory. Lays down uniform work standards. The classification system also makes it possible to diverse uniform work standards for the various levels, which helps in enhancing the productivity of the existing personnels. It prevents wastage of skills by seeing that an employee is giving tasks commensurate to her skills. Next, speeds up the recruitment process and indicates training need. Classification is also a planning device. In an organization, one specification for necessary personnel and their qualifications are determined at level. It becomes easy to plan for their supply. And it becomes easy, especially for the recruiting agency, to prescribe standards for application as well as for examination of the candidate. Helps in maintaining up-to-date personnel's record. The classification system also makes it easy to maintain up-to-date personnel's record. Once record keeping is made a part of the system, individual cause of that of a group are amenable to organized treatment. Types of classification. Classification being a process of grouping objects alike in one or more characteristics into classes, there can obviously be several criteria for such classification. The basic distinction between the British and the US systems really lies in the position versus rank concept in the civil services. Position classification and rank classification. Now, position classification, the more sophisticated of the two types is the position classification system. This is prevalent in the USA. Position cannot a group of current duties and responsibilities assigned by a competent authority requiring the full-time or part-time employment of one person. It has been defined as the work consisting of the duties and responsibilities assigned by a competent authority for performance by an employee or an officer. Position classification in the view of Milton M. Mendel, by classification is meant by grouping of positions on the basis of similarity of duties and qualifications requirements. The International Civil Service Advisory Board of the UN also endorsed this view and states it is the consensus of the organizations that the general level of the duties and responsibilities constitutes the only realistic basis for achieving a comparable classification of the posts. In position classification, positions that are comparable are brought together into a common group called classes, and the classes or classes of position is made up of positions which are sufficiently similar in kind of subject matter of work, level of difficulty and responsibility, qualification requirements of the work so as to enable similar treatment in personnel and pay administration. Under the position classification system, each position should be placed in its appropriate class. Each class should be placed in its appropriate grade, and the positions which are in one class are closely comparable in duties, responsibilities and needed qualifications and can be dealt with as a unit of personnel, budgetary and organizational purposes. Rank classification. This type of classification is followed in Britain and India. This is the traditional way in which public servants are classified in a hierarchical order according to their rank, in a sense as in the case of the army. The classification of British Treasury classes, to which the Indian Public Services is a close parallel, is a good illustration of classification by rank system. Classification of services in India during the pre-independence period. Classification of services into covenanted and uncovenanted. Till nearly the end of the 19th century, superior services in India were manned almost exclusively by Europeans, most of whom belonged to what was known as a covenanted services. The writers had to sign certain agreements and conditions between the company and himself. The Charter Act of 1793 categorically laid down that all civil posts below the rank of the councillors should be filled by covenanted civilians recruited in England. Persons who did not belong to covenanted civil services, which comprised people from England, has to be appointed to serve in subordinate capacities, and they came to be known those belongings to the uncovenanted services in contradictions to the covenanted civilians. Threefold classification of services as recommended by Atchison's Commission. In 1886, the Public Service Commission under the presidency of Sir Charles was set up. It was to examine the system under which natives of India were admitted to the higher branches of the civil administration. It recommended a three-tier system of classification of services. First one is the old covenanted services was to be designated Imperial Civil Services of India, recruitment to which was thought conduct of a competitive examination in England. A local civil service in each province, to be called the Provisional Civil Service, was recommended to constitute consisting of all those offices not reserved for the members of convented services. The third tier was subordinate civil service, which was to be constituted by transferring the lower grades post from the unconvented services. Changes brought about the classification of services under the Government of India Act 1990. After the introduction of Government in India Act 1990, the inferior services or superior services as they were called came to be divided into two classes according to the subjects administered. The former were classified as central services and the other classes which worked primarily under the provincial governments came to know as the All Indian Services. These were recruited by the Secretary of State to work in any part of India. It was decided to retain these services not only in reserved areas but also in transferred spheres, with the Secretary of State in Council continuing to recruit and control them. The basic condition of service of all these services were framed, determined and guaranteed by Secretary of State, and in effect they were the Secretary of State services, with the right of development vested ultimately in the superior authority in London. The Civil Services Rules made in 1930 indicates that the public services in India were categorized into All India Services, Central Services Class 1, Central Services Class 2, Provincial Services, Specialist Services, Subordinate Services. The main distinction then between the Class 1 and Class 2 services was that for the formal all first appointments were made by the Governor General in Council, while for Class 2 positions a lower authority was empowered to make the appointments. Class 1 and Class 2 officers generally enjoyed the Gazette status, while the subordinates or the inferior officers had no such status symbol. Recommendation of the first Central Pay Commission. The important step in the direction of classification of services came in 1946 when the first Central Pay Commission reviewed the matters. It took exception to the description of the services as subordinates and inferior on the ground of its being derogatory and recommended its substitution by the numerical calling. It recommended that these two services be called Class 3rd and 4th respectively. Classification of civil services since independence. Civil services after independence have been categorized into three parts: All India Services, Central and State Services. The All India Services, like the Central Services, are recruited and trained by the central government, but for work they are assigned to different states. Central Services. The civil services of the Union are classified into four categories: Central Service Class 1, Class 2, Class 3 and Class 4. Then General Central Services. State Civil Services. These are services exclusively under the jurisdiction of the state government and primarily administer the subject. In recent years, 33 to 113% of posts in the All Indian Services are filled by promotion from the State Civil Services, and 15% of these 33 to 113% quota from other state services. Critical appraisal of the existing classification system. As the Second Pay Commission report puts it, the line of division run horizontally across the services, resulting in a group of services and posts on a non-departmental and non-occupational basis. There may be several grades in one class which may be indicative of the salary and hierarchy in the services, but not of functions of occupation. The designation of the officers in India does not indicate anything beyond his/her position in the hierarchy of officials, from top management to the lowest rank of the leader. The middle management consists of the two levels, viz. Deputy Secretary and Under Secretary, corresponding to the clerical officers class of the British Civil Services. There is in India the position of the section officer or the superintendent, which is a class 2nd post with gazetted status. The IAS, the LPS and IFS and the Central Secretarial Services may fall into the first category. Functional services include the Indian Revenue Service, the Indian Customer Service, the Defence Account Service and the like. The technical services include Central Engineering Services, Telegraph Engineering Services, etc. The other differences between class 1 and other services are while all the first appointments to class 1 posts are made by the President, the lower authorities have been delegated the powers to make such appointments in other cases. All posts in class 1 and the bulk of the posts in class 2 are gazetted but others are not. The President is the disciplinary authority for class 1 and the appellated authority for class 2. Classification system in India suffers from some other defects. Firstly, the numerical calling in the classification, that is class 1, 2, 3 and 4 is only a matter of convenience, as there is a constant overlapping of pay criteria in services and posts between two different classes. Secondly, the system has never been designed nor intended either for orderly grouping of the services or as a tool of managing the personnel. Thirdly, the different provisions or pay and other benefits of service necessitate the maintaining of a large staff to check and calculate those benefits. Now, recommendation of the ARC. The extent of variations in some of the pay scale for job of similar and comparable duties or responsibilities both at the center and in the states, and of the disparities in the pay scales obtaining between one state and another state for the same or similar positions has been a serious disturbing factors in administration. There are many examples where certain jobs have been overvalued and certain other carrying heavy responsibilities have been undervalued. The private secretaries of ministers are in the grade of deputy secretariats and occasionally even joint secretariats. The existing pay structure introduces differences based on the service origin of the person holding the post. The ARC pointed out some of the defects in the classificatory grading structure, which are as follows. In the absence of a careful evaluation of the work content of jobs at certain levels and the matching of scales of pay thereto, the healthy principle of equal pay for equal work cannot be implemented. The absence of a rational pay structure which could take into account distinct level of work and responsibility makes it difficult to put through a program of career development based on the discovery and development of talent and a planned development thereof. ARC recommended that the posts in the civil services should be grouped into grades so that all those which call for similar qualifications and similar difficulties and responsibilities are grouped in the same grade. The number of such grades may be between 20 to 25. All the class first posts may be evaluated and assigned to say 9 common place scale. The Department of Personnel should undertake urgently a detailed study for the purpose of determining the grades as well as the post to which they should be attached. The advantages of such a unified grading structure are an automatic upward movement in a time scale will be checked. Each officer will have to display positive merit to deserve promotion from one grade to the next. A more conscious assessment of each officer's work will become a practical necessity with concomitant benefits. The existing of identical grade in the different services will facilitate mobility. In the civil service under the central government, the pay range within which the scale of pay of a post falls normally determines its classification. The division of civil services into 4 classes was adopted on recommendation of the First Pay Commission. The Commission came to the conclusion that the existing classification served no practical purpose and on the other hand it has an unhealthy psychological effect. The government, however, could not accept the recommendation since it was found that the existing classification was convenient for personnel management purposes. A purpose to replace the existing nomenclature of class 1, 2 and 3 and class 4 by group A, B, C and D also seems to have been considered since the world class might hurt the susceptibilities of some sections of the employees. The third pay commission, however, felt that some kind of classification for the purpose of personnel administration was necessary. This classification should take into account equivalence of the work content at different levels of various occupational groups to rationalize pay ranges. The present system of classification is fairly well known and the employees have become accustomed to it. Now there are some questions on the basis of this session. First one is explain any 4 advantages of the classification of services, and second is critically evaluate the present system of classification. Thank you. That's it for this session. Thank you. Happy learning. We learn.